It's going to take a little while, and I'm going to start by replicating the rear cross member here with another member that can tack weld onto the jig, and then we'll start moving forward, adding our pieces in as we go. One of the things I am going to be adding to this whole setup as we get rolling along, we're going to take the cross member, of course, out of the car. You'll see that when we get there. We probably won't get there today. It's a bit of a compressed day in the shop. I had to run into work. Work sometimes gets in the way of car progress. So, anyways, okay, it's time just to get the basics done here for the rest of the jig. So I'm adding in the little back posts and my frame reference. Then the rest of the rails are going to come off. We're going to add just a bit of channel actually that I had lying around here in a sec to give me some references to the side. There it is. Just tacking all this stuff in place. There's no reason to have it welded on. Solid at this point. And here we go. All that's been done. We're adding another piece of that H-beam here to the front. Using a bit of beer can actually to shim it. It's not perfectly, it's not a machined flat surface, so to get all the tip out of it, get it all put in, put it exactly where I want it, square it up, level it off, and that's done. Okay, we've added in the clamps to everything. So we've got all the bits and pieces in here. We've got all the channel that we've got to establish our square. Here's the back corner with you see how we raised it up there just a little bit, and the tab that's at the back end of that rail fits underneath this particular bracket. You can see that we're right in nice and tight on that. Actually, now that I think about it, let's we'll put the overhead light on here and brighten things up so we can see it a bit better. That's a whole lot better. Anyway, traveling up the rail, all we have left to do is to come in and we're going to just tack this joint for now. We'll put it back in the jig once we know exactly where everything is settled in, and make sure that we're as good and as square and as tight as we can be on this particular frame rail. So anyways, not a whole lot more to say about this one at the moment. Let's get it tacked up and throw it in underneath the car. Okay, so here we are putting that rail back in. You can see I'm having some fun with it. In fact, it's just bumping ever so slightly into the bolts for the bumper, which did necessitate having that bumper taken off just at the end of all of this. I haven't welded the cross member in. That's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to be working on squaring the subframe into the car and getting that cross member square and set where we want it. Then we'll pull all that stuff out, set it back in the jig one last time, and we'll weld it all up. Okay, so let's get started. I'm actually just going to talk you through bits and pieces of this right at the start, just so we can keep things rolling. I just need to explain a bunch of things that we're going to be doing here, and then we're going to carry on from there. Alright, so now that I'm mic'd up, we're going to turn you around, and we're going to give you a look. Okay, so we're in. Right, you can see that pretty clearly. Everything in here is fitting really well. We're super tight. Everything's nice in terms of where the rails are fitting. And what we need to be able to do here is establish a center line. Okay, so we're going to be working a little bit on establishing a center line here in a minute. I'll show you how I do that in a sec. But in the meantime, we can just dip down underneath the car. You can see the fit's actually really good on this side, on the passenger side. Sorry for the adventure. Alright, so it's up here at the back, fitting in really well. I've just got it clamped here. can see the sheet metal's a little buckled and bowed here and there, but it's all been repaired, so I'm not surprised at that. Nothing a few Tack screws can't take care of as we get going. They're actually really tight here. So I'm using a jack to push that up. We can then push the sheet metal down. And then we have a jack on the outboard rigger here. That's up right where I want it, right over here. Everything else is looking great. Now the issue actually is right here with the outboard rigger. So I've got some lines that I've placed under here before to try to establish where everything is. It actually turns out that we need a little bit more room. I think it's that way, but because we're a little bit tighter, the dimension between the rails at the back is about 1/4 of an inch different than it is right in that center cross member. And when I get it back up in the jig, we're 25 inches. It doesn't matter what you do. And then once we set it all in, that's where it's going to be. And I'm just here alone. So fitting this back in means everything has to go back in perfectly, or I start looking for a buddy. So that's always a bit of an issue. Okay, so the problem is on the other side. But in order to check that and make sure that we're right, we are going to take a minute and we're going to string the car. So we're just going to run the string right through the middle. So the first thing that I had to do was actually establish where the middle might be. Sorry for the bad camera work today, but hey, I'm learning. Okay, so first things first, we're going to take a steel ruler, a tape measure. This one happens to be a Starrett, so if you're interested in tools, buy American. They're excellent. This thing's gorgeous. You can see the numbers really well. I can't see through the back of this camera, so I'm kind of in a position here right over top. Okay, so there was a pre-existing hole here in the bodywork. We're going to use that. I don't really think I can reference off that hole. This was a hole, and then I've taken my trusty triangle file and then whittled that out just a little bit so that I have it exact right in the middle. It's like 12 1/8 plus a little bit, and that plus a little bit's been measured. So we go for both sides, frame rail to frame rail. There's a reason I didn't take these frame rails off yet. And you can see there we're right to the center part. Sorry, I lied. It's 12 3/16. That's what it is, side to side. So 12 3/16 that way. And if I can get that lined up, 12 and now it's about halfway there. Okay, I'm going to just chip that out a little bit more and make sure it's perfect. Anyway, so that's going to be from there, and then I'm going to run that all the way out, and in the center of the car, I think I've got enough light in there maybe to show you. Maybe. You can see there's a hole right there in the middle of the transmission tunnel. That was previously for the anchor point for the seat belt, so it's in the middle of the car. I've verified that, so she is where it should be. So I'm going to run a string right down to that point, and then I use that string point for the rear end as well, and we'll get into that right now. Okay, we're back. It's the next day. I have a fair bit of time actually to work on the car today, so hopefully we'll get a few of these, hopefully we'll get this project wrapped up. I'd like to be able to get these rails out and welded. It's a little bit chilly out here today, so we'll turn the furnace on and that'll lead to havoc everywhere, as we won't be able to hear anything anymore. At any rate, so we'll get the rails out, we'll get them welded. I have a little problem on the driver's side. It's around 1/8 of an inch. The outrigger is about 1/8 of an inch too long. The simplest way of dealing with that is just simply to cut it off. Then we're going to fabricate the whole piece here, get it all welded, jig back up, and then I'll add that piece back on before the final installation just to make sure everything works. But we need to get that finalized installation in there. The car is all strung up, so I put a string straight from that radiator mount all the way back to the seatbelt mount, so that gives us a standard reference line that can stay in the car. the other reference line that hopefully, if the videos all worked out, that you saw me put in, went from I transferred that line, the main line down the center of the car again from that radiator mount back to the seatbelt mount. I transferred that line down to the cross member and then strung another line, so I have two parallel lines. Anyways, back to the back of the jig table underneath to try to establish where everything is in the inside of the car. Now that those two lines are set, we can measure all of the distances that we need to measure at the heights we need to measure, and we don't want to be doing any diagonal measuring. That doesn't work very well. So hopefully that should work okay. Again, everything will be established in terms of square on the table here rather than in the car here. This is impossible. This is I've tried it. I've done it with the rear. We'll talk more about the rear end as well this weekend. Unfortunately, I have to redo some parts of that, and that's because you're learning, right? Always making mistakes, but hopefully we'll stop making as many, and we'll get this car done one day. At any rate, these rails are coming out. They'll get welded up. I will show you that, and then we're going to move on from there. All right, let's get going. Okay, I thought we'd take a second and just talk about, give you a look at the tack welds here. Anyway, I've just seen all kinds of things in my life on this one, but just be sure if you're going to be TIG welding something, TIG tack it. If you're going to be MIG welding something, MIG tack it. But you can see there the tack on the outside is just a nice little tack. Right, these TIG tacks are absolutely bull strong. Try to get the light here. Show that right. Sorry, crap cameras, garage, you know. You can see I've got 100% penetration all the way through to the back side. Now everything's not perfect, right? These are folded metal parts. These outer bits here, I don't know if you can see that, but down in the corner there, we've got some offset to that simply because they weren't folded square. I have to pick something here to declare square, so it's squared to the side, right? Rather than to the bottom. I know the bottom isn't perfect. Anyways, both sides are the same. You can see the nature of the tack. Now when I'm done welding these, they should look like that all the way through. Now I am going to reinforce the back part of this, and we are putting a tubular chassis on the rest of it. I have absolute confidence that that's as strong as that can get. Now, again, all of these welds, given the, I've got an open root here, that's kind of what I want, right? It's not a big open root, it's just a crack. You can see, well, that light will overshow it just a little bit. It's no more than the width of the welding rod. It's just a wee little thing there. Again, there's better. You can see that in there, it's just like a hairline. Right, so I want an open root just to make sure that I can get all the way through to the back side of that weld. Okay, and from here, enough talking. We'll go back to the time lapse has been tracking me as I do this. So we're pretty much ready to go. We're set up, ready to weld. So we'll take off and get that phase done.